Ukrainian troops have destroyed a group of Russian soldiers who briefly raised the Russian flag in Vovchansk city in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region. Video footage circulated in social media shows the strike on the Russian troops. The attack came after Russian propagandists spread video in social media yesterday, showing them raising the Russian flag on one of the buildings in the Rubazhansky residential area, which lies within the area of responsibility of the 57th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade. Then they gathered in a nearby building to hide. The video was used as a propaganda to claim Russian army's success in the area. There is no Russian flag in Vovchansk anymore. Ukrainian military officials have warned that the Russian command sends its soldiers on pointless missions to raise a Russian flag because for them Putin's war propaganda matters more than the lives of soldiers. It should be noted that this was not the first incident of Ukrainian troops dismounting a Russian flag in Ukraine's territory. Last week, Ukrainian troops blew to the air a Russian flag on the entrance sign to embattled Pokrovsk city in eastern Donetsk region. The flag remained in the city merely an hour before being destroyed by Ukrainian forces.
For temporary storage of the bodies of their soldiers liquidated in the Pokrovsk direction, the Russian occupants use a meat processing plant in the temporarily captured village of Mangush in Donetsk region. This was reported by the guerrilla movement Atesh, with reference to their agents among the Russian soldiers. Atesh claimed the decision was made due to an unprecedented influx of dead from Pokrovsk and Mirnorad, adding that the Russian morgue and rear logistic system is completely paralyzed. This fact confirms the huge losses of the enemy, who are hiding them, and their complete inability to cope with the situation. Atesh wrote, "The regime is neglecting the bodies of its soldiers, using them as expendable material." Atesh added, fighters of Ukraine's Omega Special Forces Center from the National Guard previously said Russian troops were suffering gigantic losses while trying to fulfill Kremlin orders to capture the Pokrovsk-Mirnorad area at any cost. Almost all of them were eliminated by drones, the National Guard said, adding that Russian forces are assaulting Ukrainian positions simply with meat, without any tactics or strategy. When you see the enemy's advancement on the maps, know what price the occupier pays for every square meter of Ukrainian land, the National Guard added, tacitly acknowledging Russian advances while emphasizing the heavy losses Moscow has incurred. Russian troops have infiltrated nearly all districts of Pokrovsk using small infantry groups, according to Gus, commander of the Shershny Bucha Unmanned Systems Platoon from Ukraine's 68th Separate Brigade. He said Ukrainian forces are countering them with first-person view drones, drop munitions and artillery. However, Gus said no part of Pokrovsk is under stable Russian control, describing the city as a grey area. He said Russian forces are focusing their efforts on Pokrovsk's southern neighborhoods, Sonyachny, Shartarsky, and Lazurny, and attempting to converge from the west and northeast to encircle Ukrainian troops. Despite intense pressure, he noted that Russian units remain very far from achieving their goal. General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. Army Europe and Africa, argues that Pokrovsk's fate could shape the next phase of the war and warns that Western hesitation in supplying long-range weapons may be costing Ukraine critical ground. Ukrainian Army Chief Oleksandr Syrsky indicated that Ukrainian forces were stepping up pressure in Dobropilya to divert Russian attention from Pokrovsk. Ukrainian military reports stated that Russian troops did not have complete control over any part of Pokrovsk and were attacking in small groups. Pokrovsk had a pre-war population of around 60,000, but most civilians had left. Capturing it would benefit Russia by allowing further advances towards Kramatorsk and Slovyansk. If taken, it would represent a significant Russian success since the fall of Avdiivka earlier in the year. Elsewhere, Russian forces reported heavy strikes on Ukrainian military targets, including an airfield and repair facilities, while also claiming progress near Kupiansk, where they faced resistance from Ukrainian troops. During a protocol event in central Moscow, Putin experienced an awkward moment that dealt a heavy blow to Russian propaganda and to Putin personally. A girl named Kira, invited to the ceremony as the child of a special operation hero, publicly complained that her uncle, wounded at the front, was being sent back to the war zone without treatment. After the official part, several children were brought up to Putin. Suddenly, a girl broke the carefully planned scenario and said something no one expected to hear on live television. "My uncle is at the front right now. He was wounded in the arm. He was in the hospital, but they're not treating him. Now they're sending him on a mission. I'd like him to be transferred to a good hospital in Russia," the child said. The Kremlin's PR people, who carefully control the flow of inconvenient information to the media and Putin, especially in front of cameras, failed to take into account that a child is capable of asking a direct and pointed question. Putin's face registered confusion. He looked flustered and blurted out a clumsy, "We'll find him, okay? We definitely will. Thank you for remembering him. Good job." But at the moment, millions of Russians literally saw live on television that Russian soldiers were being crippled not only by war, but also by their own state. As Russian and independent telegram channels note, such incidents are occurring en masse. The wounded are evacuated from hospitals without receiving full treatment and immediately sent back to the trenches. Many of them return to the front with unhealed wounds, fractures, and even gangrene. These people are often unable to hold weapons and fail medical examinations, yet still find themselves in new meat assaults. They're simply picked up from the hospital, loaded into transport, and taken back to Donetsk or Kupiansk. Military bloggers write, Kira's remark was the most awkward moment for Putin in months. Russian authorities usually carefully filter such encounters, but apparently no one expected a child to dare tell the truth. Recall, some critically injured Russian soldiers who could have been saved are dying on the battlefield without ever receiving medical attention, according to a new investigation by the independent outlet Verstka. Even Defense Ministry doctors admit that the Army's medical care is poorly organized, with potentially savable soldiers not evacuated in time and others sent back to the front lines even when their treatment is unsuccessful. Medusa shares an abridged translation of the outlet's findings. Russia's defense ministry claims that Russian soldiers who are wounded on the battlefield receive prompt medical assistance. Officially, the mortality rate for these soldiers doesn't exceed 0.5% and continues to decline. However, these figures don't include soldiers who couldn't be evacuated from the battlefield in time, reports Verstka.